everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, and we are just 14 days from the election as I sit here with my co-hosts Emily Compagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Leslie Marshall and Brian Kilmeade.
Yay.
Well, we begin, as you think where we begin, with the high-stakes midterm elections now 14 days from today. Candidates in some of the most closely watched races are facing off in their one and only debates. Like tonight, the Pennsylvania Senate matchup is in the spotlight. It's a race that could determine which party controls the Senate. Polls show only single digits separating John Fetterman and Dr. Mehmet Oz. And Fetterman's campaign is now trying to lower expectations about his performance tonight, reminding the media that he's recovering from a stroke and was never much of a debater even before that, and that he lacks his Republican rival's experience in television. Meanwhile, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis faced off against his Democrat challenger, Charlie Crist, last night. And Crist came out swinging, but DeSantis, well, he gave it back pretty good. Watch.
Why don't you look in the eyes of the people of the state of Florida and say to them, if you're reelected, you will serve a full 4-year term as governor? Yes or no? Yes or no, Ron? Will you serve a full 4-year term if you're reelected governor of Florida?
We did not agree on the candidates asking each other questions. Governor, it's your turn.
Well, listen, I know that Charlie's interested in talking about 2024 and Joe Biden, but I just want to make things very, very clear. The only worn-out old donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist.
Yeah, that was quite a moment. I had the same reaction, Emily. In Florida, Brian, we also know him as a chameleon because he was Republican, then independent, then Democrat. But this headline stuck out to me from NBC. Florida Democrats are fretting over Republican Governor Ron DeSantis' popularity among Latinos, saying they are boosting his chances of becoming the first Republican governor in 20 years to win Miami-Dade. He's ahead by double digits in basically every poll. This would be enormous.
You know what I think it is? It's performance. It's not, wow, he has the right message, or he is so charismatic, or he's got this new gel. He goes out and turns around the economy. He opened up the schools. He made sure people were listened to. He took on corporations like Disney, and he got rid of that woke attitude that is infiltrating so many school systems. I also add to this, the Hispanic vote. He's beginning to consolidate Hispanic vote. It's not unusual for a Republican to be able to win over the Cuban community, but it is unusual to the Puerto Rican community and others that involved. And by the way, to acknowledge there are other aspects to the Hispanic community. It's not a holistic get one vote, get them all. So I just think it's on performance. They like the way he's leading the state while keeping taxes low and attracting businesses in, especially in Miami. My goodness, that place is pulsating with business opportunities and entrepreneurship.
It's so true. I mean, Harris, he holds a 7-point lead over Crist among Latinos, 56% approval among Latinos. I mean, we talk about it all the time on this couch. You see it in Nevada, you see it in South Texas, you see it in Florida. This community is changing who they are voting for.
Well, and we talk about it all the time because it is such a huge loss for Democrats, that voting bloc. And they've really kind of misinterpreted, as Brian has said, what the differences and the nuances are among those communities of color, right? They look at them as a single voting bloc, and they're not. And we're not, as people who are also of color. So, I mean, I do think that this is about the big loss for Democrats, and now Republicans can start to take advantage of that. I would say, though, in Miami-Dade, it might be something else. DeSantis means it. When he was pressed last night, I watched it live, by the way, on my phone. I just couldn't put it down. And that part where he called him the old donkey, whatever. Of course, the audience, my phone was like vibrating. It was like, oh, from the sound of it. But what he said was, when Crist came after him, well, you were getting rid of elected officials, you know, and DA's offices and everything, soft on crime. You can't do that. And he said, but I have done it.
Right.
And I would do it again. And that's what I think people like about him in Miami-Dade. Right. When he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. When he said he was going to reconnect Sanibel in less than 60 days and get those people what they needed, Crist tried to take advantage of the moment and say that his policies that set up Sanibel, well, the thing fell apart. It's this guy's policies who've helped put it back together in less than a year. It's been pretty impressive.
You know what's most impressive, too, is that he does things and then the polls come in. He doesn't get polls and then act.
Right.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. I also think of Surfside. He's the consoler.
So true. Emily, moving to tonight, high-stakes night, John Fetterman, Mehmet Oz. Everyone's been waiting for this moment, just one debate. And voters have asked us, in a CBS poll I looked at, we don't care about Fetterman's location, where he lived, his residency. We don't care about Fetterman's health, Oz's residency, I should say. So let's focus on the issues, what voters want to focus on. They want to focus on crime. I have 2 sound bites I want to play here from John Fetterman. First one we've heard. This is about Morgan Freeman. Let's take a listen. This is his view on criminals and murderers.
For skeptics or those that aren't familiar with the state of affairs in Pennsylvania, I reference a cultural touchstone that most have seen, the Shawshank Redemption. And I say, who thinks Morgan Freeman should have died in prison? You know, and no one says, yeah, they should have. Then I'm like, that's what this looks like in Pennsylvania.
So the murderer is Morgan Freeman, a fictional character, or the murderer, guess what? He may be your grandpa or he may be your grandma. Take a listen to this.
Some people in the public think that you're talking about all bunch of Hannibal Lecters in prison, and they're not. They're like your grandfather. They're like your grandmother.
Okay, well, let's talk about grandma, because 10 days ago, Fetterman had a vote. FoxNews.com put out this piece about John Fetterman, about one of the people he wants to revisit the case. Her name's Brandon Mills. She's serving a prison sentence of at least 5.5 years after she allegedly used scissors. This is a different scissor killer, by the way, and knives to attack her housemate in 2021. Police also reportedly found Mills sitting on a couch at the residence holding knives. The outlet noted that after disobeying police commands to put the weapons down, Mills began stabbing herself in the chest, and police had to use a taser to subdue her. So my grandma doesn't do this, but to Fetterman, this is just grandma.
The problem with Fetterman is that reality is a totally different experience than what he's living in. So he says, well, I have the tattoos of the names of crime victims on my body. But guess what voters don't care about? His tattoos. What they care about is real life. And the real life that Pennsylvanians are facing, as reflected in the polls, are that they care about crime and inflation. And what matters to them are Fetterman's actions. So his votes to commute sentences, to reduce parole, to get out of prison, to totally change the reality facing these criminals, because he calls them grandmothers and grandfathers, and fanalizing them as such, that's what's going to resonate. And his campaign can soften all they want the expected result of tonight. I would think, as a Pennsylvanian, I wouldn't want someone qualifying a performance. I would want someone, a candidate that says, absolutely, I'm going to be super strong. I'm going to be super strong in everything, and that's why you should vote for me. The fact that they're coming out ahead of time and saying, oh, but you know, he's really not good at debating anyway, and like, just so you know this, that's the last thing, the last tactic that will instill confidence in this man. But going back to the crime, the bottom line is his votes are atrocious, horrendous. And when he says everyone knows this cultural touchstone, what everyone knows is reality and the real stories coming out of prison and the criminal justice system there in the horrifying situation in Pennsylvania and other Democrat-led cities and counties and states is reason enough to go to the polls and vote for anyone but Fetterman.
And Emily Leslie has very nicely laid out on the couch that criminal justice reform is separate and distinct from what Fetterman is doing. Fetterman on the parole board has voted more times than any other member to let people with life prison sentences out. That is very different than the First Step Act.
Mm-hmm. But here's the problem, okay? When you look at the polls, first of all, Fetterman is leading, and he's not leading within the margin. He's
single
leading,
digits.
So he's still leading by 6%. 1. 2, I would agree with you on issues as far as that's what the campaign should be about. And I think the reason that look, I'm a Democratic strategist, not a Republican strategist, right? But if I were a Republican strategist, I would be telling Dr. Oz tonight to do exactly what Emily just said, because his popularity, his approval rating is not good. And this is a problem for him. And it's not just being an outsider, as many view him in the state of Pennsylvania. It's the personal attacks as a doctor on Fetterman's health. And like you said, that's not what people want.
But what about voting to let these murderers out? We've put up their pictures. We've told their stories. I mean, great. Do you think that's going to help him?
No. What I'm saying is he is 6% ahead, okay?
Single digits.
Single digits. Why? Because everybody's focusing on the personal attack. People aren't focusing on the issues that matter to the voters. But obviously, these issues don't matter perhaps as much, just like a debate doesn't matter as much. The people are pretty much set on who they're going to vote for. You know this. It's going to change, a vote or two. But tonight, there are going to be people that are going, oh, look, Fetterman's not fit, for office. He's got to read this. And then the people that love him are going to say, we have no problem with that. He's doing really good. He's going to be better. He'll be great by the time. Because this is the seat that could determine the balance of power in the Senate. So I don't think the debate, sadly, is going to matter tonight. And Fetterman did what is doing, in a sense, what Herschel Walker said, right? Herschel Walker said, look, I'm not as bright, I'm not as great at debates, et cetera.
But I think the debate will
thing, though,
affect.
with your percentages, because I want people to really understand. So last hour, we looked at several polls. We do the politics average on that. Fetterman's up by 1 percentage point. And CBS News Battleground Tracker poll, Pennsylvania Senate contest narrows. This is just from a few hours ago. The most recent polling has them at barely 2, just under 2, and that Fetterman was up by 5 points last month. So, yeah, I don't see 6 anywhere. I know you can find an outlier, but that gets averaged in, and it's 2% or under. It is squeaky tight, Leslie.
And I think his health does matter.
Yeah.
If he can't do the job, he can't do the job.
Do you think it matters that he'll need a monitor?
Yeah, we got to run.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think a lot of voters are going to say, I'm not voting for the guy who lets murderers out of prison and is the reason I have high inflation because he supports the Biden agenda. That's going to be the takeaway. But we'll see.